Welcome everybody back here at Veil of Sound. I normally do not like to use living legend, and I'm very sure that my interview partner today would also refrain from it. But if you have made music with Trent Reznor, with John Lydon, with Jazz Coleman, if you are an author, a music consultant, if you are affiliated with a university, if you opened a museum, then in part, I think that word living legend is justified. I'm very, very happy to have Martin Atkins here on the show. Martin, thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's a lot. It seems like I have done a lot, but I'm also just old as fuck. I'm going to be 67 in August, so.
Yeah, but you are 67 and look 45. I'm 48 and look 67. That's the difference. Martin, we always start here with the plug of the day, and I want to plug a band from somebody that you very surely know. I would like to plug Scorpion Tea by Adlai O'Dowd.
Okay.
One of the other frequent contributors of Genesis P-Orridge, and I think his project definitely deserves more attention.
Scorpion Tea.
Yes.
Okay, I need. Well, that's good. I need to go find that and listen to that.
He released one record in 2023 through Give Take.
Wow.
So yeah.
Oh, okay. I know those guys up in Minneapolis. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, Martin, is there a band, a record, a project that really kicked you recently or constantly that you think is underappreciated?
Well, yeah, there was for a minute that Poutrine band from Canada, and they just exploded, so fuck them. There's a band from Chicago currently touring Europe called Ganser Band, Ganser, and I love those guys. They're like post-punk, angular, punch in the face. I love what they're doing. They're really nice people, and their music's great. So I'm going to plug them.
And also indirectly, you already say where we can find you at the moment. For several years already, you're born in England, but you've been living in the Chicago metropolitan area for quite some time now. That is also where the museum that you opened, I think 5 years ago, is located, right?
Yeah, I've been in Chicago since '89, and the museum opened 5 years ago. Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a moment, because I sometimes like to rub PR people into the face that when they forgot something, and I did that with our close friend Dan, who arranged this. Dan listed all the anniversaries, the museum, 30 years of recording the record that we are going to talk about, 35 years of Killing Jokes, 45 years of the Public Image Limited record, and he totally forgot one of your own records. Do you know which record turns 35 this year?
Is it the Ministry Live album, in case you didn't feel like showing up?
It could be, but I looked up Pigface's Gut was released.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, 35th. Yeah. 35th anniversary.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Would you ever have thought that you would be able to make a living of music?
No, I don't know that I have. I make a living from 10 things. It's something I tell my students.
Yeah.
I'm doing 10 things, and I advise them to do the same. Maybe grandparents will say, "You got to do one thing, focus on one thing." It's like, no. I'm screen printing. I'm building a studio, recording engineer, producing, arranging, writing books, speaking. I have my own several different brands of coffee, and none of these things are like big money spinners, but it's really great. There's a great, powerful thing in meeting somebody and giving them a bag of really great coffee beans instead of a demo tape. Nobody wants a demo tape. People
Nowadays, no.
want, right? People want a bag of coffee, you know.
And sometimes the bag of coffee is easier to digest. Uh, Martin, let's dive into the new record or what means the new record? The record which is now released for the first time on vinyl,
Yeah.
Howler and English Breakfast that you did with Genesis P-Orridge. First of all, the recordings were done in 1996 and 1997. How did it come, or how did it come about that it took 30 years to release them?
Well,
on vinyl.
yeah, I think it's a function of a few different things. It's like celebrating different aspects through the museum and the archives and going through stuff. So just to go back a little bit, my studio wasn't a part of the museum initially. And after a year and a half and everybody saying, where's the studio? Is Steve Albini's tape machine downstairs? We opened up the studio and then, well, what are we going to play people? And we start to go through the archives and found different mixes, insane 45-minute dub mixes, you know, and there's so much of that. And we wanted to celebrate that individually. And it's strange to have that work sandwiched on a Pigface album, New High and Low. It's kind of weird. So we separated it out, used a different mix, and identified that as a separate thing to celebrate.
It's interesting that you say sandwich, because if one looks at a New High and Low, which the 3 songs were originally released on, I think also in a somewhat shorter version than now on the new version. Even that one, it's way more than half of a record, but it seems as if with some kind of add-on to the 12 songs before. Is that also because those 3 tracks were recorded very separately from the other 12?
No. Everything was recorded at Mattress Factory, which is my studio. But I think, like, you, in a good way, mostly, you never knew what Jen was going to do. So Jen came out to work on a song that ended up being 40 minutes long. What are you gonna do? You know, and you know, I'm sure I could do a version with some hand claps on the chorus and ooh, it's the Howler, you know, and but things want to be what they want to be, and I think this is what this wanted to be.
Yeah. So in which way, maybe musically, do the tracks now on the vinyl release differ from the release on the second CD on A New High and Low?
But mainly dub treatments, you know, analog dub mixing, which feels like it's a lost art. You know, I understand why people are mixing in the box digitally, and you can tell a computer or a digital console, you go through all the screens and you find, okay, we're going to send the snare to this thing, and you could write the automation to do that. But that's not that's not performance dub mixing. It's not organic. It's decision spreadsheet graph plotting, you know, and that's not what dub is. So I'm starting to uncover all of these different dub explorations of. It's what I used to do in my studio to chill out. You know, I might spend 10 days finding a 3-minute 10 mix of something from a 5-minute version of a song. And once I got that, once I disciplined myself and got that, I break down the mix and just start looping things, having something distort into a gate, back into a tape delay, going around, and hypnotize myself for a day, you know. So I'm delighting in finding these pieces and I think it's causing me to reconfigure my studio back to analog dub, so I can immerse myself in these vibes again, because I miss it. I grew up with that, with Joe Wobble and Mark Lusardi at Gooseberry Studios in London, and I want to get back to that.
Is that also in some way a question of generation? Like you grew up with that kind of stuff, what it sounded like originally, and nowadays a lot of people, like there is a difference between hearing dub songs on, for example, Spotify or on YouTube, and listening to them on vinyl. Is there something of a generation thing in there as well?
Yeah, it's not in the medium. It's in the creation, and so the people come down into the studio. We had interesting people come down into the studio, and they're like, "Oh my God, what plugin is this?" It's like, fuck off. This isn't a plugin. This is 9 things feeding back into themselves. And they're like, okay, no, we get it. And they clearly don't, because 5 minutes later, they're like, oh my God, what's this plugin? I'm like, it's a different feedback through a different thing, and so it starts to dawn on you. If you seek to differentiate yourself, which, I aspire to do that. I like, why else, I don't seek to conform, I seek to differentiate. And so it just seems natural that, like, everybody was using analog studios, that's what we had, and then digital comes along, and now all of this inconvenient, heavy, difficult to maintain bullshit gets pushed out of the way. And so the product of that machinery becomes interesting to people's ears because they're not hearing it all the time. So now it's like, okay, I have the means to explore this equipment that I haven't used in a while. A couple of pieces need to be maintained, but I'm excited to confound people and excite people's ears with this different stuff that does unexpected things.
I want to get into the record also from a kind of persona point of view. I've heard, and I'm not sure if that is true, I've heard a very interesting story of how you first met Jen P-Orridge. Is it true that you met at the Sharon Tate house?
Yeah.
Do you want to tell the story? Because otherwise people will just say, oh, he's rambling again. I want you to tell it.
So it's funny. It's name droppy as hell. But,
I know. That's why I want you to say that.
So I'm at Rick Rubin's house in Malibu. There you go. We'll start there. No. I don't think I knew it was his house at the time, because I'm like, Rick, I'm working with Skinny Puppy on the process. Shoot. So I'm like, Rick, we've got to get out of this fucking house, this fucking studio. I didn't know it was his studio. We're using a Neve console. It's just like the wrong place for Skinny Puppy. As with California was the wrong place for Skinny Puppy, but that's something else. So that house was so difficult, and I was used to being around difficult. The house was difficult. So I took a break to go and visit Trent, who was working on Downward Spiral at the Tate House.
Good that you say that. So number 3.
Yeah. And Trent wasn't there. And also, talk about, So the Rick Rubin's house was so stressful. I take a break by going to the Tate house. Trent wasn't there.
I've been where she was murdered?
Yeah. On I forget that address. We have a birthday card from Charles Manson sent to one of our founders, and they donated it to the museum. But Trent wasn't there that day. I don't understand why I wouldn't have called to check. But anyway, Genesis answers the door, and he's hanging out with Timothy Leary. So
we're already
Yeah, and so we hung. I don't remember much about that hang, but next thing you know, Genesis is part of Pigface and jamming with us on stage in San Francisco with 6 cassette tape machines and a bag of cassettes. Yeah, so that's how I met Jen, and then we released the 6 Psychic TV albums that Wax Trax released. When that license expired, we reconfigured and released all of those through Invisible Records, and then started to release other material with Jen. Jen's first show with Pigface, or first tour with Pigface, is memorialized on an album called Truth Will Out. That was recorded by the same mobile that did their Ministry, in case you didn't feel like showing up. It's really fantastic document there. So our paths intertwined for several years there. Yeah.
And then I read somewhere that, I mean, like, first of all, it's clear who participated on those 3 tracks on The Howler. So there we can also, again, drop a lot of names, but you've already spoken about dub. And I think that is a wonderful thing here, because a lot of people first and foremost associate Pigface with a kind of industrial sound, which to me is too narrow of a box. Because when you listen to The Howler, that is, and you've also spoken about that already, it is a very hypnotizing thing. Those 3 tracks, more than an hour. I mean, like you've already said, that it was difficult to record because Jen was basically already doing stuff that wasn't there. But how did that feel in the moment when you were making that? Because to me, it sounds like pure magic.
Well, yeah, there was so many of those moments with Pigface that when you remove strategy, except for having no strategy, and you go with the moment, and you know there's already obviously a concise, focused album on disc 1. There's no need for an additional experiment or additional track, except there was need for it. I needed to do it. We needed to do it. So you go with that, and I still lose myself in those mixes, you know, because that's what dub is to me. It's not. It's a mood, and it puts you in a place. It's so alien to now, because it's like, hey, got 45 minutes? No, nobody's got 45 minutes. You know,
45 seconds.
You know, and maybe it's like there's this another thing going on with me in the studio, which has to do with speakers. So it's like, nobody listens to music anymore anyway. We listen on bullshit pods in a distracted way. I listen while I'm on the exercise bike, or I'll listen while I'm cooking or driving. I kind of like to listen when I'm driving, but that's different. We were just gifted a pair of custom-made, insane speakers that I've never seen before. My friend Rose applied for a grant for $5,000 and had Aaron Palucci, who's been making speakers since he was 9 years old, build a pair of tri-amplified custom speakers. So now we get to this, we're in this different place now of sitting in the middle of these speakers listening, you know, and then we get to a different place of like, well, what else enhances this mood? The lighting change, incense. What are we going to do with this? So we're back to this continued experimentation that was Pigface in the first place, where we like different moods, performing in silhouette behind screens in shadow to upset the audience, but it's a really interesting, different moment. So this, in many ways, I'm just starting to realize, with the luxury of reflecting on this work through the museum, what we fucking did, you know.
And then, oh wait, and then the question is for me also, is that something that you, because you've already said it, it's like the museum is able to transport you back into those times to re-listen to that thing. Are we gonna get more new versions of Pigface music in the next couple of years?
Well, you're fucked, because I mean, I just listened to WAW, which is Wobble Atkins Walker, before it became The Damage, before Chris Connolly christened it The Damage Manual, and I'm listening, I'm just hypnotized. But back then I was in the studio 20 hours a day, many days, and experimenting with Wobble and Geordie, and I'm listening to ideas that became other recognizable songs. So they're not remixes, they're premixes. And it's fascinating to me. And people are just like, oh my God. So yes, the archives are ridiculous. But this, I just want to put a, I don't know, it might seem like this is a nostalgia project. I mean, it's a museum, so you'd be forgiven for thinking that.
Yeah.
But you know, my drum kit is set up on the main floor, and I play my kit. I started playing my kit ferociously before we did the Extremities project. It took me a year to get into Killing Joke shape for that event, and then Justin Pearson from The Locust is there. So I'm like, well, let's rehearse here. Why don't you plug into this bass rig, which was Paul Raven's Killing Joke bass rig, which Jar Wobble played through, which Charles Levi played through with Pigface. So we're in the space using the instruments. So it changed the museum for me from one of looking back to one of still looking forwards. The experiment is not complete. Like, let's look at some pieces of it, you know. I let people go downstairs for 9 Inch Nails Day sometimes, and we'll pull up the multi-track of Trent Reznor singing Suck with Pigface, and I let people do a mix and they'll leave with their own cassette. You know, so we're trying to preserve and understand the past, but we're also, you know, destroying, like, you can leave with your own shitty mix of Suck. I don't care that it may or may not meet a certain bar approval. It's your mix. You did it. You know, we do the same thing with a t-shirt, which might have informed the remix thing, where I'll let people make a shirt, and people don't get upset if they do a shitty job, because it's the shirt that they made.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, hold on a minute. How does this pursuit of perfection even make sense if people are delighted by their own fucked up t-shirt?
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
You know, so we're not even close to being at the end of where we can look back on some things with nostalgia. We're looking forwards with excitement.
So now you've already mentioned your drum kit, and I'm very aware that you probably do not like the Living Legends thing, but are you aware that you were one of those defining drummers of a whole era of music? I mean, like, you already mentioned Killing Joke. We've already mentioned Public Image Limited, Pigface, all those things. Are you aware of that? Are you aware that, you know, your name drops on a shitload of really important records?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, yeah, but I mean, and I'll use those references as weapons, you know. Like sometimes, you know, in academia, I have my master's degree now, but I don't read music, and so sometimes I'll say to my colleagues, yeah, you know, no, I don't read music, and I have a Grammy, so what do you know, so some of these things are weaponized for me, but it's like, well, I think I turned my back on some of this, maybe not intentionally. You know, I was in the studio 16, 18, 20 hours a day. We released 350 albums on Invisible Records. And my craft was an arranger and a producer and a drummer. But then Spotify came along. Didn't seem like much need to be making so many albums. And at the same time, I began teaching. And I'm going back 25 years. And I thought that was an interesting opportunity. I'm a father of 4. I was a father of 2 then. And I just thought it was interesting for a father to explore other options for the family, a responsible thing to do. I don't know. And but the opportunity was more than that. There wasn't a textbook for touring. And I was just teaching that one class at the time. I developed programs now. But so I wrote a book. Like what? I mean, it seems kind of like who the fuck did I think I was to write a book? But that was a punk approach. Like, why wouldn't I write a book? You know. So I wrote a book, and I thought that was an interesting opportunity. But that became an Amazon Music Business bestseller. Too smart. And but that wasn't
in a moment.
But that wasn't even the opportunity. Next thing you know, I go to Norway 5 times, England. I go all around America a lot. South by Southwest, 13 years in a row as a featured speaker. I go and keynote Melbourne Music Week in Australia. They're like, who wants to be a keynote speaker? Like, I don't know. Like, it's not an ambition. It's not a thing that people want to do. Most people are frightened of speaking publicly. All of that, I start teaching more, I start developing programs, I write another book and another book, and for a period of about 15, 16 years, I just wasn't in the studio. The studio was dormant. Why would I go in the studio? I didn't have 16, 18 hours to lose myself in a session, which is necessary to get to a place of focus. And there wasn't any need for me to do that. I was busy doing other things. And it was the museum, this crazy idea of the museum, that brought me back to the studio.
You've already mentioned Tour Smart, the book that you released several years ago. And what I like about it is not only that you talk about touring, but you also have contributors. For example, Rollins. You have someone from the Marilyn Manson compound. You had Kevin Lyman. You had the Suicide Girls. Was it also important for you to include other people's ideas about touring and not just have it be your own voice over and over and over again?
Well, yeah. I mean, what kind of an asshole would I be if I thought I knew everything? You know.
Well, I've known professors at university that think that way.
Right. So, I mean, like this, I'm still on my learning journey, you know? So, we just did an event May 2nd where we blocked off a street with permission from the city of Decatur, Illinois, put on a street festival. And I'm like, here I go, you know, I know what I'm doing. It's just 15 bands inside, 15 bands outside, 15 different vendors with booths selling stuff. It's run by students. And this woman, Kim, from a local store, took this alleyway and suspended upside down multicolored umbrellas. And I'm like, what the fuck is she doing? Created an area with giant Legos and sand and art for children. And it never occurred to me to have an area for children. I'm thinking, 15 bands, they're selling beer inside. Here we go, motherfuckers. I'm like, and there was children on skateboards playing in the sandpit. I'm like, oh my goodness. So, you know, what kind of an asshole would I be if I thought that I mean, plus, it would be to my detriment if I thought I couldn't learn anything, because then I wouldn't.
Yep. And looking at that list of contributors, did you call on them, or did it? In which way did it happen? In which way did you get those people?
I think I called on them. You know, like I know most of those people. Like, hey, do you have any thoughts on this? And then I might think like, you know, we need an accounting approach. And Lisa Molina came in with a fantastic chapter. And Fabricio Nobre from South America. Why your band, I don't know if it's Tour Smart, it might be Band Smart. Why your band is not playing my festival. You know, like, I just wanted all of these opinions. And I got them, yeah.
I think sometimes it's also important for young bands to know how to approach, for example, blogs and fanzines, because we very often get stuff and I'm like, do you think that I really would listen to your stuff for one sentence that you included and didn't even say hello and goodbye? That would be band smart, I would say. But yes. Coming back to, and now I want to really at least go into those two records that we have mentioned at the beginning. You recorded Extremities with Killing Joke or you released it 45 years ago. What do you remember about that moment? Because you were already an established musician, and all of a sudden you join a really established band. How did that work for you?
Well, it was interesting. I nearly didn't get on the plane. I was excited to join Killing Joke. War Dance, Love Like Blood, Change, 80s, Nighttime, Kings and Queens. And then I heard Outside the Gate. And I spent a week like just not knowing what I was going to do. And I decided, well, I wasn't in the band that made Outside the Gate. Paul Raven and Paul Ferguson quit over that. And I would never allow that to happen, which that was kind of elevated of me to think that. But when I arrived in England, it felt right immediately, but also it became obvious that there were large problems within the business of the band. They owed money everywhere. There was work to do. So I started to help manage the band, took some responsibility for that, and took it upon myself to get the band to the US, where there was more money, more opportunity, and not many people really understood what Killing Joke was and how influential Killing Joke was. And then because Jazz and Jody introduced me to Al Jorgensen in Chicago, they knew Patty Jorgensen, Al's first wife, and Al mentioned, I want you to come out and play drums with Ministry. I'm like, yeah, okay. You know, people say all kinds of things after shows.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I started to see, in the same way that I saw what was happening with punk in London, 76, 77, there's something going on in Chicago. I don't know what it is, but I think I need to go there and jump in. There was, it was an interesting period. So whatever I thought before the Ministry tour became tenfold after the Ministry tour. There was no room for a Jazz Coleman ballad. It was time for Killing Joke to double down on what they were and accelerate and intensify. And so the recording of Extremities, I describe it as a knife fight. I mean, I was like this the whole time. And this sounds strange for me to say. I felt like I was defending Killing Joke, sometimes from Killing Joke. Maybe especially from Jazz, who was writing ballads and submitting ballads to me and Jordy, and I'm like, no. There's a scene on a live VHS tape from a sound check in Miami, and Jazz is riffing on I think a song called "Everybody Feels Pain Sometimes," and So we're at sound check, and I'm not in the picture. You can see the front of my drums, but my face isn't in picture. I remember this moment. Jazz is like, everybody feels pain, so, and he's like going like this to the drums, and I'm just sitting there like, fuck no, mate. I'm not even giving you a fucking stick click for this shite. Not going to do it. You know, Geordie's playing the guitars. Great guitar from Geordie, but there's no room for a ballad on where this band needs to go. Yeah. It was later released as we found this lost track with Hooky on bass, whatever. But it was a knife fight, and John Bechtel on samples, who's done the last 17 years in ministry, really contributed to the textures of this album and the intensity. But after a while of faxes going backwards and forth, have you heard the new track from Jazz? And me and Geordie are like, no, we're not doing this. In the end, Geordie came to Chicago. I was friends with Steve Albini, and we went to Steve's studio at his house on Francisco Street. Recorded
before he had Electrical, right?
Yeah. We recorded demos to his 8-track half-inch machine, which I now own. And so me and Geordie were like, we expressed that we got tired of sending faxes, and we sent 6 songs to Jazz, which they're all on the Extremities album. Money Is Not Our God, North of the Border, Intravenous, maybe. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. And so it became a battle. And how wonderful, unexpectedly wonderful, to luxuriate in those tracks last year, taking them apart to find the pieces, understand what was going on, and some different vocalists would be like, "Killing Joke, I'm fucking in," and then the next day they'd be like, "Fuck, I don't know what Jazz is doing, maybe not," you know. It was a brave album to wade into, and over the course of most of the year, we got to celebrate and revisit the album, celebrate Raven and Geordie, fucking cry, and then do that in public. With Geordie's first wife, Ginny, came in from Detroit in attendance, and she cried for 3 days. I mean, it was intense. It was an intense thing that isn't on anybody's bingo card list. Like, we'll do an album, then we'll do a tour, then we'll do another album, then 35 years later, we'll pull the album apart, we'll reflect, we'll cry, we'll, you know, I mean,
yeah.
we took a cash register, and there's a cash register in the Money Is Not Our God video, which Jazz set on fire in the alley behind Invisible Records, which is also behind Reggie's, where we played. And I said, we're going to have a cash register fire ceremony. I came up with the phrase before, you know, then I went and bought a cash register, and then, which was really heavy, and then we wheeled it into the alley and set fire to it. And I thought it was silly. Are we still going to do this? It was snowing, the weather was horrible, and 85 people followed me out into the alley, and we set fire to this cash register, and we hugged and we cried, and it's like, yeah, we're on the right path. I don't know what the path is, but we're on the right path.
So when you describe that Killing Joke time as time of fight, I would have thought you would have said something similar about being in a band with John Lydon, Public Image Limited. You were young at that time. That was before you became, or that is one of the reasons why you became an established drummer. How must we imagine young Martin going into a studio with one of the, at least publicly, biggest narcissists on this planet and recording Flowers of Romance, for example?
Well, it's easy when I tell you the truth of those sessions. Keith wasn't there. Keith was. I would joke, and I will still joke. Keith and I had our share of confrontations, and we resolved our differences towards the end there. I would say I knew which room Keith was face down on the floor in because I could see the pattern of the carpet on his cheek, you know. So if Keith wasn't in the room very much, he was face down or playing Space Invaders, and neither was John. You know, John takes credit now for creating the album, and somebody asked him at one of his speaking engagements last year, what about Martin and Flowers of Romance? And I think John nearly started crying, as he does quite often at the drop of a hat these days. He was left in the studio with pieces of a beat and tapes and a cassette and a quarter-inch. He managed to construct an album out of the fuck off. Under the house, 4 enclosed walls, banging the door, Home is Where the Heart Is, the Flowers of Romance track itself, which wasn't credited to me, were all fully formed before John walked into the studio. Nick Launay and I were so the young Martin Atkins walked into the most insane sand pit for a drummer of 11 years, but not a studio cat. I hadn't spent any time, a little bit of time with the first Brian Brain single, experimenting, you know. Well, like, we didn't have a bass drum. We tapped on a D12 microphone. It sounds just like a bass drum. What the fuck, you know? We experimented. And that's what Nick Launay and I did. Like, I want to play drums to this Mickey Mouse watch. I want to record my voice at 15 inches a second, slow it down to 1 3/4 inches, the presets on a 1/4-inch tape machine. And I'm drinking Perrier, and then that slowed down becomes this insane primordial soup, and I play drums to that. That's a track called Vampire, which I don't know why that wasn't included on Flowers. They released a version which is just my drums. I have a version with drums, guitar, bass, keyboards, and John singing fully formed lyrics. So whatever. So I was parachuted into this playland where Queen recorded We Will Rock You, and Phil Collins recorded In the Air Tonight, the best drum room on the planet, and we get to fuck around. Like, now you go into a studio, it's like, whew, like Extremities. We wrote those songs in a practice space, rehearsed them in a practice space, took them on the road just like a comedian Stuart Lee would do. Take the ideas on the road, like, here's our best idea. Everybody left. Perhaps it's not a good idea. We we riffed these ideas. The audience came closer and closer, and the violence happened. Okay, more of that. You know, we did that because we didn't have money for studio time. We went into some great studios. I recorded the drums for Extremities in 11 hours in that same drum room at the townhouse. You know, Jazz booked 3 days because he had no confidence in me, and just to fucking prove a point, I recorded all the drums in 11 hours. And then he recorded MIDI keyboards in the best drum room in the world. Anyway, so we're messing around. Instead of a hi-hat, we used a can of WD-40, which caused John to set off a CO2 fire extinguisher, which begins under the house. You know, we're experimenting. There's some religious choir sounds in Under the House. A TV show called Songs on Sunday was on at 7 o'clock on a Sunday night. It was on the TV in the studio. We just put a microphone in front of the you know, it was music concrete. It was all these things. And John was always hovering. He'd be outside the studio, you know, or in front of the console there was a couch. You had to be careful because John took delight in like being there for 3 hours and then popping up. Hey! Surprising you know, hoping that you'd say some shit about him, probably. But he would walk into the room with fully formed lyrics on the back of a cigarette paper and sing those over, and we're done. It wasn't like, great, I'm loving what's happened on version 1, let's experiment. No, here's this idea, John sang over the top. And in the same way that I think Maynard with Tool takes some bizarre, difficult piece of music and turns it into a pop song, John did the same. And weirdly, in trying to pretend that John went in the studio with an idea, or was instrumental in the creation of the tracks, by pretending to do that, he paints himself as a regular singer with a strategy and an idea and some lyrics on a piece of paper. Martin, I want kind of a Chieftain's triplet beat on this Under the House thing. He didn't direct the sessions. His persona and his career to that point gave us the luxury of being able to experiment in these ridiculous places. And that's what John did. And I think his vocals were magic. To witness that, like, what the hell? He's singing a solo. I didn't expect this for a minute. And so in trying to paint himself as the creator of these tracks, as the singer, as the producer of these songs with a strategy and an agenda, he's painting himself as I guess, is that how Bono is, or however any of these singers are? He's denying the existence of this other magical John, which is much more interesting to me.
When you talk about magic, and you are a drummer, and therefore I think you might be one of those that could answer the following question best. Whenever I listen to songs from any of your bands, especially the ones where you are very, very up front and center, I have a feeling as if the beat, which of course is also part of the word heartbeat, is it maybe the part of music that comes closest to man as like a physical body? Like, we have a heartbeat and everything you do. Is that maybe closest to us than any other instrument? Instrument, not voice. Not voice.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's primal, you know. Next to my, as part of my drum kit at the museum, is my glass mirror ball, and during the Extremities second show, I reached a kind of a physical wall that I, like an idiot, wasn't expecting, and I punched that ball and fucked up my hand with pieces of glass in my knuckles. But I did that to stop my brain thinking of, what are you doing? This was a bad idea. Come on, man, you can't do this. Like, fuck that. Bam. And it pulled me straight back into the moment. So this part of the act of drumming itself, when I came back to it, 2016, I'd had a break. I was surprised at, even though I was physically exhausted, I was mentally recharged, and I started to wonder about being ADHD, and when you know, a fidget spinner that kids have in class, right? Well, drumming is the ultimate fidget spinner. Like, every part of your body is doing something different.
Your body is a fidget, right? Yeah.
Right, and if you think too much, you stumble and fall off the kit. You have to go to a different place to be able to let your limbs do these different things. And yeah, but, you know, Wobble came to the museum about 18 months ago, and we jammed for a while. It was wonderful. But then also spoke really eloquently about the mesmerizing nature of low frequencies, and almost we were talking about this earlier, the meditative state that low end can induce. And Wobble went on way beyond that philosophically, as the intellectual that he is now. He used to be a thug, you know, and I was an intellectual, and which is wonderful, to talk about the mesmerizing nature of low frequency. And so I don't want to say, yes, drums are just because I'm a drummer, because I know about bass. And I would assume that there's a hypnotic state, perhaps, of how do you make a guitar do these things. I think music, generally, in its best form, is what you describe. It has become strategy, bullshit. It's become strategy and bullshit.
Yeah.
And how get by setting fire to Spotify? And Spotify has changed how people write music. Spotify has changed the craft to a different craft of how to get listens and how to tweak the algorithm. Yeah. And to me, it's more about how do we get to people? How do we reach people? How do we have a moment with them? How do we have an experience? And now it's more about being in an alley in a snowstorm, setting fire to cash registers, after experiencing this music, after calling down the gods of Killing Joke, pressing these buttons. How do we do that? And I'm moving more and more away from selling more, digital distribution. When there are a few more releases through the museum, we might stop selling on the web. If you want this stuff, come and visit the museum. I'll make you a cup of coffee, and So the moment is broader than, deeper than the music on the whatever the format is. It's the journey. It's the conversations you had with your friend because you had to find somebody to split the gas money and keep yourself awake on the drive from Buffalo, New York. And it's the story of the flat tire and the argument you had, and you played each other's playlists, and then we sat down, and you in the same way I mentioned 16 hours to focus in on a session. Well, what's wrong with a 2-day drive to focus in on a museum visit? And more of that stuff, which I knew nothing about 5 years ago, and the museum has started to teach me this stuff.
So, Martin, thanks for all the insights. For everybody, when this interview comes out, the new version of The Howler will already be out, so please take a moment, an hour and a little bit more, to listen to those 3 tracks. It's a really, really, really great experience. I can also emphasize, please listen to it on speakers or headphones. If you have good speakers or good headphones. Don't use those little ear pods, that will ruin everything. But, Martin, nobody leaves these interviews here without going through the quick fire round at the end. Okay. I thought hard about which things to give you. So I'll give you 2 Nine Inch Nails records, for example, that you were not involved in, as far as I know. Okay. The Downward Spiral versus The Fragile. Which one do you like more?
I'm more familiar with Downward Spiral, and the story of Trent being beaten up at the bottom of a fire escape, which is the same spot that we set the cash register on fire. H-Gun Video made both of those videos. So, yeah, I'm going to say that.
Mm-hmm. Ministry, also 2 records that you were not involved in, as far as I know. Filth Pig versus Land of Rape and Honey.
Land of Rape and Honey.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just because people think, I'll ask people at the museum, do you know where the album title comes from? People are like, oh, it's a religious. I'm like, yeah, no, it isn't. There's a town in Saskatchewan, Canada, where they grow rapeseed for canola oil, and they also grow honey. And so, not now, because they took the fucking sign down. Welcome to Tisdale, the land of rape and honey. They're like, I think Al saw that sign. I'm trying to buy a souvenir coffee cup, but they also removed all of the souvenirs from eBay. Yeah. So that's my favorite of those 2.
A few months ago, we did an interview with J.G. Furwell from Fetus, and I'll give you two Fetus records.
Okay.
Death versus Gash.
I'm not familiar.
With
I would say with either. Not as a title. Probably on a playlist. Like
Death is the first one, and Gash is the one that he released in the middle of the 90s, which also changed his sound quite a bit.
So I don't know. I would say scraping Fetus off the wheel. Jim is a member of Pigface also.
I know that he worked with you. I'm not sure whether at the moment in this collective, but yes, of course.
Yeah.
Rollins Band versus Black Flag.
I love the Rollins Band. I mean, Andrew Weiss is a glorious part of Pigface and Ween, and is all over the Fook album. Played with us 2019. Chris Haskett, and Rollins Band. Sorry, yeah. For personal, I was also at a Henry Rollins show in Chicago, talking with Henry the night that Raven died. So that resonates for me. Yeah.
Somebody that I haven't looked it up, but I'm very sure that you also worked with is Justin Broderick. So I'll give you two Godflesh records: Street Cleaner versus Selfless.
Street Cleaner. Somebody just sent me a picture yesterday. I thought, I've got somebody in a Godflesh shirt, but it says Goldfish. And it's a picture of a goldfish.
Okay.
Oh, that's fucking brilliant. Yeah.
Maybe the most important American punk band of a first wave versus, at least to me, for me personally, the most important punk band of a first phase from England would be the Ramones versus the Clash.
Well, I love the Clash. They stayed. I used to live at the Iroquois Hotel. They wrote Rock the Casbah there. Keith Levine was a founding member of the Clash. Don Letts was involved with Pill and the Clash and Big Audio. But I'm going to say Ramones because of the groundbreaking Forest Hills show, their contribution to punk. And you've also got to mention the Saints in there too. Sorry.
We could mention many bands. That's
yeah.
I have one last, and here I come to the subtitle of the new record. The record is called The Howler, an English Breakfast. So I want to know, what is the best part of an English breakfast? Eggs and bacon or tomatoes and mushrooms?
But I'm going to say neither, but between the two, bacon and eggs.
So what would you say is the best part of an English breakfast?
Well, one of the best parts of an English breakfast is there's 10 things. So it's like, what am I going to do? I don't know. There's this thing now where they'll put the baked beans in a little pot. Like what? I want the beans to spread in amongst the egg yolk and onto the fried bread. I love the sausages and the bacon and black pudding, a grilled tomato, mushrooms, of course, the hash brown situation, which is a new addition, the triangular American hash brown situation. But it's all, perhaps a kidney?
What about, what is it? The fish that you sometimes find in an English breakfast?
Smoked haddock?
Yes.
That has no fucking place on an English breakfast.
Thank you.
That's a separate. No, it's a separate situation, separate plate.
A very, very good plate, and I can only suggest to everybody, listen to The Howler, released May 29th through Overdrive and Invisible Records. Martin, thanks for the wonderful conversation, and
Thank you.
Your chance for final last words.
Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to mention to people the museum Patreon. It's not a traditional Patreon where, you know, the more money you pay, the more access you get. Like, oh, fuck that. It's pay what you want. You can pay nothing. Many people pay nothing, and you get access to everything. I couldn't reconcile the fact that some people who supported my music in the 80s or the 90s, who maybe came to 50 shows or bought 50 albums, maybe they have hard times at the moment, could really use to lose themselves in this Patreon, perhaps couldn't do it. So I just made it pay what you want, and for nothing, you can choose to pay nothing. You get access to, there's 50 or 60 really great posts touching on some of the things that we've talked about today. We take some great pride in when we find something like, hold on, like photographs. There's all kinds of stuff up there. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. I'm not trying to make any money off anybody, but if you like all the stuff and the things we've been talking about, go and have a dig around.
And if you want to go there straight away, you will find the link beneath this interview. Martin, thanks for your time and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks a lot. It's very enjoyable.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you.